Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Abhijit Baduri. I work as a talent advisor to different organizations, and I work as an executive coach for individuals. But today, I want to introduce you to somebody who is writing for Archie Comics. And I can guarantee that you've never met somebody who's writing for Archie Comics. And if you say you have, then I'm going to say, okay, in addition, this person also raises sea monkeys. And I can guarantee you that you have never seen somebody who actually writes for sea monkeys. And the third one is that here is a person who likes to dress up as one of those comic characters when she goes for Comic Con and various other comic conventions. So that's my guest. And of course, I will also add one more piece of trivia from my side, which is that she's the only person I know who has green hair. Actually, it's green everything. So without any further ado, Goldie Chan, welcome to the conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
But of course, today I'm going to not talk about the fact that you write for Archie Comics. So maybe we
Okay.
should, but I'm more interested in talking about your book, which I loved, which is called Personal Branding for Introverts.
Yes.
Um, I'm going to
I
talk about that. Show me the book. I knew it. Goldie, why could I guess that it's going to be green? The
I mean,
mic
of
is
course
green,
it's
your
going to be
hair is
green.
green.
Everything is green.
Yeah, you are the brand ambassador for Green Planet for sure.
Yes, yes.
Okay. I'm going to get started with the premise of the book. You know, if you had to do a one-line blurb for the book, what would that be? And then I'll tell you what, my definition of the book would be. But first,
Absolutely.
you.
Absolutely. So I would say the one line definition of the book is personal branding should be accessible and reachable for everyone, including introverts who feel shy, reticent, quiet. Personal branding is for you.
That's actually very counterintuitive. That's what I first thought, when you
Yeah.
see the title, personal branding, a lot of people have actually mistakenly believe that personal branding is, just being loud and in your face and all of that. But
Right.
it's not. I mean, you actually have built about a whole range of things that people can do in order to make this work for themselves.
Yeah.
So let's get started with, some of the key ideas that you've got. First of all, how do you define an introvert? Is this the Myers-Briggs type definition, or what's your definition?
Yeah, so I think that there's always the Myers-Briggs definition, but I like to define an introvert in a much simpler way, and I like to compare them to extroverts in this way. When you go to, say, a conference or you go to a social party, does your battery get depleted over time if you are around other people, interesting people, people you want to talk to, or is your battery at full when you talk to those people? Now, if your battery gets depleted over time, you might just be an introvert.
So I'm going to sort of ask you, how charged is your battery at this point of time, and where does it end up when we finish our conversation? I would ask you for the reading. What's the reading right now?
I'm pretty tired. I've just had a couple of other calls. So I would say that right now I'm probably at 70%. So we'll see where we go at the end of this chat.
Okay, and when you think about personal branding, what are some of the elements that people don't get right about personal branding? Let's start with that. What do people make mistakes about personal branding?
Yeah, so I think the number one mistake that people make around personal branding is exactly what you said, is that you have to be loud, you have to be super showy, you have to go and, pump your fists against your chest and say, "This is my personal brand. You have to believe me." And as you know, a lot of what personal brand is telling the story that you want others to know. And then that influences another word, which is actually not personal brand, which is reputation, which is the story that others say when we're not in the room.
So, would you say the difference between personal brand and reputation would be reputation is what others think of your personal brand, and personal brand is how you want to shape it. Is that a fair differentiation, or have I not got it right?
You've absolutely gotten it right. So, personal brand is the part of it that we have control over. It's what we want others to know us for. It's the story that we can tell. And reputation is, unfortunately, that's the side that we have less control over, but we can influence it using personal branding.
What are some of the things that people can start doing, when they want to build their personal brand? What is it that they can start with?
Okay, so if you're thinking about starting your personal brand, I'd like to start with the simplest exercise possible. Who do you want to speak to? Do you want to speak to, and there's going to be three tiers here. Do you want to speak to your peers? So other people who have maybe a similar job, a similar role, who are at similar experience levels than you? Or do you want to speak to one level above that, which might be your potential clients, which might be your potential bosses, which if you're in corporate, that might be your board of directors, right? Your C-level executives, your boss. Now let's go one level below that middle tier. We might want to speak to our generalized audience. So the amazing people listening to this podcast or listening to this clip, that's the generalized audience. So first determining which of these three tiers you want to talk to, then we can start defining our brand keywords.
And you also talked about in your book, the other thing that caught my attention is just a very basic question that you asked, and it really got me thinking, which was, why do you want to build a personal brand? What is the end goal that you have in mind? Is it, to get more clients? Is it to be better known? Is it to be known as an expert? A specific thing? That's, I thought, was a really great question.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I think the why is so important. And I talk about the five C's of personal branding. And one of them is clarity. And clarity is the why. Why are you building your personal brand? Because if you just say, I just want a personal brand, then you could put out 100, 1,000 pieces of content, as you know, but there will be no point to it. And it'll be very confusing what your personal brand is versus if you say, I want to do executive coaching, right? And a lot of your amazing content is around executive coaching. Well, then everyone knows that you, my friend, you do executive coaching.
So being clear about the end goal, what do you want happening because you are building the brand? It's really like saying if you're launching a soap or a soft drink or whatever, then
Yes,
at that point of time you want to get more consumers, to try out your product if it's a new product, or
right.
to grow the market. If you already have a consumer base, instead of drinking it once a day, you want them to drink it twice a day, so that doubles your sales. Um, when it comes to the social media today, how do you determine which is the best platform that you have for building your brand? Does it change from person to person, or everybody should get started professionally on a certain place or something else? How do you decide that?
So I think it really depends on that audience question that I asked. Who do you want to speak to? Because if your audience, say, primarily lives on Pinterest, well, then you should be on Pinterest. For most of us, I will say it is very helpful to be on LinkedIn because LinkedIn is the professional platform. So if you're not already on it, I would suggest that you get on it and you start to build your profile, you start to build your connections, add in your network into that profile, mostly because, once again, LinkedIn is the place where decision makers are. So I think that there's so many important and helpful people who are already on that platform. But if your goal is not necessarily to talk to decision makers, it's to talk to that generalized audience, then maybe it would be better for you to be on Pinterest or on an Instagram or on TikTok. It really depends on who you're trying to speak to.
So my first takeaway is that you need to be clear why you want to build the brand, which is
Hmm.
where you are looking at, what is build that clarity in terms of who do you want to talk to. The second is
Right.
to figure out where are they? Are they on LinkedIn? If it's a professional conversation, potentially that's where you want to be. And then if you are looking at somebody which is a generalized audience, it could be some of the other platforms like Instagram or Pinterest or whatever catches your fancy. Let's limit ourselves to professional branding for everybody, especially for
Right.
introverts.
Right.
Introverts find it rather difficult to, reach out and network and sort of, go up to a stranger, shake hands, and introduce themselves. They find it hard to do that.
Right.
Uh, on social media, you actually are asking people to connect to hundreds, if not thousands of people. Is that hard?
I think that is hard for introverts to get out of their shell sometimes. And I think, but I have a whole chapter called The Internet is for Introverts. And the reason why I titled that chapter that way is that it is, of course, hard. Honestly, I think it's hard for everyone to network. It's hard for everyone to connect to each other. But I think it's a little bit easier for introverts to connect with others online. And especially when you're talking about hundreds, when you're talking about thousands of people. It is so much easier to send that connection request, to start liking and commenting and sharing other people's posts, to start doing that early engagement so that you get on the radar of the people that you really want to be connected to. I will also say that, of course, with the internet, and I know that you will agree with me on this. One of the most powerful things, though, still to do is even with your internet connections, with your online connections, it's still helpful to meet some of them offline and to be able to connect with them one on one because that at the end of the day is still the most memorable thing you can do. But you can make it easier for yourself by establishing a connection earlier on the internet.
So it's not a cold call, when you're meeting somebody, you've already got a relationship built in a more comfortable setting. You are in your home, you can talk to
Yep.
somebody, have that conversation. And then when you meet somebody in real life, IRL, then it becomes much
Yep.
easier. I have to sort of go back in time and think about the time when I first heard about this phenomenon called Goldie Chan. And it was like, I still remember the term people used to describe you as the Oprah of LinkedIn. And then, of course, we met at various conferences and it was great. I want to know that you made content every day for a span of time, every
hmm
single day.
hmm
You're making content. How much time did that take you every day?
So I will say that at the height of my content making, I made over 800 daily consecutive videos, which if you think about that, that's over 2 years of daily consecutive videos, right? Not just pieces of content. And this was, I hate to say this is pre-AI. So this is 100% me. And I remember I was on LinkedIn for 12 to 14 hours a day, most days a week. So I was spending the majority of the day when I wasn't in meetings, when I wasn't at conferences, I was on LinkedIn answering questions, responding to people, engaging. And this is really how I built my community from, I would say, 300 followers to 3,000 to 30,000. And then now I just hit six figures. So now I'm at 100,000. Yay.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
phenomenal.
you. Thank
That's
you.
phenomenal. When you grow your community, how do you stay engaged with a very large number of people?
So I think it's hard, as you know, because you have 5x the number of followers that I do. I think it's hard to stay connected to everyone. But what I try to do is whenever anyone comments on my posts, I try to respond to every single person. I also try to be now more proactive again about saying, commenting on different posts that pop up in my feed. I try to be really thoughtful when somebody tags me, especially if they feature me, that I will respond to that tag or that feature and leave a comment because I know how important and helpful it is to get comments on posts. So I really try to make sure that I'm engaging. I think it's impossible to engage with all 100,000 plus people every single day. Just not doable. But I like to try to engage with at least 10 to 20 people a day, which, as you know, when you're busy, even 10 to 20 people is a lot.
My view, especially is something you also talked about in your book a lot, which is that to build authentic connections, so it's really people can make out fake behavior from a mile,
Right,
and
right.
which is why to build this deep, authentic connections with maybe a smaller number of people, but to do it on a constant basis, I think is really the magic inside. Give me another big takeaway that I would have from your book, and then I'll share what I thought was pretty interesting. It's a little
Yeah.
piece of trivia. So I'm going to give you my version of something that stuck out for me.
So I think one exercise that I do towards the end of the book, which I think is really fun, and other people have pulled it out and said, "Oh, this is interesting way of thinking about it." I have something called IDD or ideal daydreaming. And for that, you basically think about what is your perfect day. But instead of thinking simply what is your perfect work day, it is what is your perfect work life day. So I'll give an example of my friend. He ended up moving to a different country. He lives there with his partner. And in their ideal day, they get up, they have breakfast together, they go do work, they both work from home. At lunch, he sits and makes them lunch. Then they finish out their work day. And at the end of the day, they actually have supper with their neighbors a lot of times, or they go for a walk in their neighborhood. And this is a beautiful, ideal day, right? This is an ideal daydream for him that builds in work, but also the quality of life that I think so many of us forget we need to have.
If you were to, sort of talk about your two or three interests, and I want to first get started with why did you choose to make green your favorite color? It's in your hair, it's in your mic, it's on your book cover, it's everywhere.
Right.
And I can also see bits and pieces of green in the background of your
Yeah.
home. So it's everywhere. Uh, why did you choose that color and what does that represent? In your book, you've talked about many of those that, you can pick a color that seems to be like you and then you consistently wear it in as many places. In your communication, you use more of that. So I found that to be an interesting insight. Tell me more about your choice.
Yeah, so it was as many things in life. So green actually is my favorite color. I love green. To me, green is the color of growth. It's the color of change. It's the color of new beginnings. I will say though, the reason why I have green hair is because I used to cycle through hair colors every few months. But when I started to blow up on LinkedIn, when I started doing videos on LinkedIn, my hair was green at the time. And then people would start to use the green heart emoji. They started to use other green emojis with my green hair. And I almost stumbled upon the branding for myself because I happen to have green hair. People really liked it. And as you said, not a lot of people have green hair versus, there's other people who have red hair, even purple hair or blue hair. But green tends to be a more rare hair color in general as well. So it worked out that I had green hair. And then I decided to keep the green hair. And I keep saying I'm going to change it. But now I don't want to even date our friendship, but it's been almost close to a decade, right?
Yep,
So that I've
I
had
would
green
say that.
hair.
How did you get into writing Archie comics? Tell me more about that.
To back up maybe a more or less interesting thing that I wrote for was Forbes. So I was a senior contributor at Forbes and I covered a lot of brands that I just like. And Archie Comics is one of them. So I became connected with the leadership team at Archie Comics. And I am an Archie Comics fan, just genuinely through and through. They're to me one of the most classic pieces of Americana. They really show the American life. They've shown it for so many decades at this point. And I connected with leadership, and one of them, who's now my friend, we were just having a talk, and he was asking me, okay, well, do you have any dreams, Goldie? And I said, one of my dreams is to write one Archie comic in my lifetime. And he said, okay, do you want to pitch me? And I said, yes. And he's like, send over a few ideas. And this is when you're prepared, everything goes better, right? I already knew exactly that story because I am such an actual Archie fan. I said, this is the exact story. These are the characters who are involved. This is the storyline. This is the beginning, middle, and end of that story. I pitched that story and he said, perfect. This is so Archie. And I was like, I hope it is because I've spent so many years of my life reading Archie comics. And that was my first Archie comic ever, was that I had opened a door. I had pitched something that I absolutely knew was exactly on brand. and that it got accepted because I had done so many, at that point, years of research to become successful in that one tiny moment.
Which is also very similar to what you talked about right off the bat. You talked about authenticity and, just being consistent. And this is something that you've been interested in, and it always opens up the door because you know more about it than anybody else, and therefore you have a point of view about where to take the brand, and which is why brands like to work with you to build that kind of a partnership. And I know that you're going to be doing a lot of talking based on your book, and I want to wish you the very best. Show me the cover one more time because I want to just sort of say that I read the review copy of the book, so thank you for sending me that. But this is the actual book, Goldie Chan, Personal Branding for Introverts. It's counterintuitive because you always think that introverts struggle with that, but no, it doesn't. That's the book for you. When do you launch it?
It launches on October 28th. So at the end of this month that we're talking in, I am so excited. It comes out October 28th, which is actually the first day also of Adobe Max, which is Adobe's largest creativity conference. So I will be carrying around copies of the book, stickers, etc. at Adobe Max as well.
Fantastic. Wish you all the very best for your book, and I hope that people will buy it because that's where you will learn about, regardless of whether you are an introvert or an extrovert. I think there's a lot that you can get out of that book, and that's what I thought was my reason for liking it. Even though it's written for introverts, it works just as well for extroverts. So, with that said, thank you so much for being here. Good luck with your book, and
Thank
thanks for
you.
spending time.